I like to think I'm a careful reader, and then I'm reminded I'm not at certain times. I'll have to give credit to Red 21 Viper, somebody who commented on my last video in relation to how I was talking about how Kellis spoke. And it seems really obvious now in hindsight, and I guess that's why hindsight is 2020. It's pretty obvious in that regard once you actually look back and things start to come together. But is the bastard son Kellis? I'm guessing that's true. I responded to Red 21 Viper. He or she did not respond. So I'm going to assume that's the case. And it's funny because now it all makes sense. And there was a clip of me talking about in the last video about how you have to really put your head in the cultures and the time and situations of all of these characters to really comprehend how they are. And so he commented that don't... The reason why Kellis speaks that way is, if you were locked up for, 2,000 years essentially, and in these halls and separated from just normal daily life as anybody else, sort of just educated by books, I guess, and you're going to speak kind of odd. And that really puts it in context for me. So I will retract everything I said about Bakker's ability to write dialogue because it's illuminated. It's revealed in this next chapter here to be just fine. So again, I think that's one of those things that I'm curious out there. You veterans of the of this series, did you discover that right away, or was it something that came to you later? I could still be wrong. He never answered. Let me know in the comments. Unless you guys think it's a spoiler. If it's a spoiler and you don't want people who are still reading this along with me or may find this down the road, if you feel like it's important to not tell them, then don't tell them. So let us move on with chapter 1. This was a cool one. I really enjoyed this chapter. I'm really getting an overall vibe of kind of the Dark Souls franchise of video games. If you guys out there have ever played those, I absolutely love the tone of those games. I'm terrible at those games. They're frustrating. It's kind of hard to explain other than the lore itself is not thrown in your face. You kind of discover it. You look up at a castle wall or a tower, or you find some ruin, or you find some lonely knight sitting somewhere, and just the lore and the setting just kind of drifts over you like a fog, and I absolutely love it. That is the vibe I'm getting from this book so far. That's what I'm picturing in my head. Perhaps it has a lot to do with the cover art. I think the cover art is extremely important to convey the mood, and I think having the black cover in this regard, hopefully anyway, is the vibe that Bakker's going for. But we are in Carithuzal. So Carithuzal, we meet a man named Acamian, I guess, and he is a spy, we find out, and he meets Gishruni at probably one of the coolest tavern names I've ever seen, which is the Holy Leper. I love that title, and there's even more biblical references in this chapter, which I'll get to. So clearly that is that's something that Bakker likes to play with. I'm probably missing a lot because I'm not a biblical scholar in the slightest, but I also thought it was really cool that there's an area called the Worm. I mean, if that doesn't scream Dark Souls to you, I don't know what will. But yeah, he goes in. He's a spy. He's meeting his contact, this guy who's like a slave, I guess, or a slave warrior of some kind. He's a big guy with like tattoos all over the place. He threatens him with this shokrai, something like that. I have it highlighted here somewhere. But he talks to him about there's some wars going on between these Scarlet something or others. Yeah, Kore, here it is. Schoolmen called them trinkets. Those who followed the 1,000 temples and condemning sorcery as blasphemy, they were called tears of God. Kore were relics of the ancient North, so valuable that only the marriage of heirs, murder, or the tribute of the entire nations could purchase them. Kore rendered their bears immune to sorcery and killed any sorcerer unfortunate enough to touch them. It's a small sphere of iron, and so our Acamian, I guess, he is frightened. He's worried that he's going to be killed, right? Because he is a sorcerer. Anyway, they have this conversation, but the coolest thing, honestly, the coolest thing about this entire chapter, was what was going on in the background. So while these two gentlemen are having this conversation, there is a lady of the night, let's call her, and she's playing this game where she's, I guess, sticking coins between her cleavage, and I think he says she uses honey or something like that. But it's such a great technique to have this kind of a countdown in a way. It's a way to build tension, and so these guys are counting every time she successfully sticks a coin to herself. They count 1, 2, and so I just heard this raucous kind of laughter and dialogue happening in the background while these two guys are, well, things are heating up, you might say. And at the very end, somehow he had won this night, and he had won the way horrors always win, without understanding. It's a great line. After all, spies were a little different from horrors, sorcerers less so. So great scene. I love that scene. There was a lot of tension to it. There was definitely some name dropping, some wars that are happening apparently, some more lore drops. I think it's okay, right? It's okay. I guess that's the one thing I should talk about too, is that there's a lot of names and a lot of things that were just thrown at me in this. I think it's the best way to world build. It never felt too expository, even though there is a lot of exposition. There's a dream sequence that well, you don't really know it's a dream sequence, and then he wakes up. But yeah, let's move on. I really enjoyed that first scene. We learned his first name is Drusus Akemian, and he's a spy, like I mentioned. But anyway, here we see a description of the worm, which I really enjoyed. The worm was a labyrinth of crumbling tenements, brothels, and impoverished cultic temples. Damn, that's cool. That really hits me in all the right places. I love dark fantasy. I love gritty, realistic, just tangible, tactile, I guess is the right word, descriptions. And there's plenty of those in here, especially when some kind of creature of some sort attacks the slave. So speaking of that scene, the guy Geshruni, he leaves the tavern, the holy leper, and he gets approached by this chubby man, who I imagined looked something like Varys from Game of Thrones. I think that's the right name, right? But anyway, his face stretches. So he pulls out this thing that I forget the name of that will kill sorcerers, and then he throws it at him, and he catches it. And he's like, oh shit, what's going on here? But Geshruni watched his round face loosen, then flex as tight as a beggar's hand about copper. Really cool, simple description. And he says, something impossibly ancient, the abomination said softly. Inconceivably beautiful. Great end of another scene there. And this is when we are in the, I guess, apocalyptic dreams of the sorcerer. So one man, a man long dead, looked out from behind the many eyes of mandate schoolmen. Seswatha, the great adversary of the no god and founder of the last Gnostic school. That is a mouthful, but it sounds really fucking cool. I really loved one man, a man long dead, looked out from behind the many eyes of mandate schoolmen. That's such a great line that really captures you. But I didn't know what was going on. I was like, oh crap. Here comes all the lore drops. Here comes the exposition. But no, I was wrong. It's actually a nightmare. And we are thrown back into the sorcerer's room. He sleeps on a straw bed. Again, I just love the vivid detail that Bakker is presenting here. And I noticed that Seswatha, while he's dying in his arms in his dream, says something like, these names, Bakker. Anasurimbor will return at the end of the world. Is that Kellis? Is he prophesied to be the guy who's going to return? But in the distance, he thought he heard howling, a dog or a man. So it's kind of neat too there, where we're having these two. And I know I complained about this in my reading of Gardens of the Moon, where there was so much just head hopping, right? Where you were sort of privy to what was happening to another character, but then the other character didn't know about it. And so we had to revisit that entire path through them. But this was cool because it was just punctuated just at the very end of this scene. So it just gave you a sense of time and space, even though this worm and the city just feels so vast and claustrophobic. I thought that was a cool touch. And then he starts writing these scrolls. He's kind of documenting his dreams. And I didn't get this, but he says something like, Fords of Tiwanare, same. Burning in the library of Sogalish, different. See my face in, not S in mirror. Not same in mirror. I wasn't quite sure what that meant. But he notes it as a difference, a discrepancy. So again, mysterious. Is this something that I missed? I'm not quite sure yet. But then he goes and takes this note to give to, well, presumably it's going to be delivered to the guy who's he's being dragged away, I guess, to his death. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention the eye plucking. So he says something about, don't you just pluck the eye from your foe if you don't like it, which of course was very reminiscent of a quote from the Bible. I don't remember what passage, but I will probably put it up here in post so you guys can see it. And I'm sure all you guys out there who've read this book, you know all this stuff, and you probably have taken a deep dive into Bakker's reasoning behind what he's doing. But that said, he takes this note to this poor kid, this poor delivery kid, who we briefly learn history of. And I think that's one of Bakker's strengths here. And I've seen it in other authors too, but how he can give such a history, a background to this character, this poor little kid who's sleeping in an alleyway, and he mentions there's like offal behind him, like buzzing. So it's just these rotten guts. And also he's got this pomegranate kind of birthmark on his face. And he makes note of how he's not sure how this guy gets by, how this little kid gets by, this poor child, until he recalls a really nasty person kind of grabbing his crotch and stuff and asking for sweet pomegranate. So really cool chapter. Again, we had like a really nice tense scene, and then we get into some weird apocalyptic dreams. Then we see some monstrous, chubby faced man who is not a sorcerer. He's something far more interesting and beautiful, apparently. And yeah, I felt like I didn't read that much, even though it was, a good amount of pages, because I don't think I've ever read a book ever where I get to the end of chapter 1 and I'm like 10% in to the novel. So it's kind of different. But anyway, appreciate the comments out there, everybody. I wasn't sure if people would find this interesting, but it appears as if that those of you who have read the book love it so much that you like to see somebody else experience it. And also let me know out there if you are discovering the series and reading it for the first time along with me, because don't fear, comment down below. I'm as ignorant as anybody else out there. I'm probably saying a lot of things. I'm putting myself out there. I'm embarrassing myself by all of the things that I know nothing about, where all of the people who have read this are probably cackling behind their screens. But anyway, love to know your thoughts. Thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for watching. And I'll see you in the next video with chapter 2.